meeting in a minute, I think 31. Good morning, folks. I'd like to call the June Planning and Stakeholders Relations Committee meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the roll call. Jessica?
Yes, I'm here.
Morning. Ann?
Here.
Stephanie?
Here.
Any other board members would like to identify themselves?
Lori Mizgorski.
Michelle Smianik.
Okay, thank you, guys. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the May 19th Planning and Stakeholders Relations Committee meetings. Are there any corrections to the minutes? See no corrections. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now, the next item on the agenda is a rebranding update from Jim Ritchie. Jim, are you on the call?
No, I'm here in the boardroom, John. Good morning.
Oh, good morning.
So I'm going to talk just a little bit about where we're at with the rebranding process, just a bit of status as to where things stand and what's occurred, what's coming next, and then when I finish, we're going to have a resolution for the committee to consider at that point. So as most of you know, on June 9th, we did announce the rebranding, the authority's intention of rebranding the agency as Pittsburgh Regional Transit. We had a public announcement, which we held at Gateway Station, was open to media and guests, and there was a lot of coverage and visibility that day about the announcement. As you can see in the photo, we did have one bus wrapped with the new Pittsburgh Regional Transit name and design. So there was, some visuals for people to see. And as I'll talk about in a minute, a lot of that change we'll see roll out through the system in the coming months. So some of the changes underway right now, we are internally, we started with the public announcement. So we made our intention known of changing the identity of the agency publicly to Pittsburgh Regional Transit. But a lot of the changes that will be noticeable to riders and the public, such as bus design, signage, operator uniforms, website changes, these are going to occur in the months ahead. Some of these things will take just, a little bit of time, maybe a couple months, 2-3 months. Other things such as changing out the look of our entire bus fleet, our rail fleet, and the signage across the system will take longer. So right now what we're doing is working with all of the groups who are responsible for those kinds of things, making signage changes, ordering buses, to make sure that they have what they need. So as they order more, that'll come in with the PRT look already embedded into that bus, that vehicle. As we make normal signage changes in the system, obviously we are changing the signs also to reflect the PRT branding. Other signs and other vehicles, we are going to sort of jumpstart the process. So these are changes that we wouldn't normally do, but we want to do up front to start to get that public awareness out, to start to really have the PRT visibility across the system as much as possible without being able to change the whole fleet, the whole system at one time. The Public awareness campaign is about to kick off. So we're going to have about 2 months of public awareness. This is promotion throughout the area that to make people aware of the name change and what PRT is, what Pittsburgh Regional Transit is, what it's going to look like, just so people know there's a change happening, and to point forward to some of those other things that they're going to see throughout the system. So when their bus changes in appearance, they'll understand that that's why it's changing. As signage changes throughout the system, same thing. We want people to know that. We don't want that to come as a shock. I'll also mention that internally we are sharing this information throughout the organization, and we'll be continuing to do so over the next couple of months. A lot of our employees were involved early on in this process, and as I've talked about here before, this predates the pandemic. So a lot of the early research that led to this change happened prior to COVID hitting the United States. And we had employee groups, focus groups, stakeholder groups where we did a lot of research. And so a lot of our employees were involved up front at that time. And then as that information was gathered and collected, we did some internal sharing of that information as well. So it's been some time since that's happened, so there is a need for an internal refresher, if you will, and of course, just to share internally what the name is, what the look is, and what things will be changing throughout the system. So there are a couple legal steps, and the resolution that I'll review in just a second here basically allows Port Authority to change its trade name, the doing business as name. And I've had this question many times. Legally, we are Port Authority of Allegheny County. We were established that way in the Second Class Port Authority Act. We will remain Port Authority of Allegheny County legally in that sense. We will be DBA, doing business as Pittsburgh Regional Transit. It is the brand name of the agency. We've had brand names in the past. Other transit systems across the country have a similar setup. Not all of them, but some of them do. Some of the metros, for instance, you'll find they are listed as having a formal name and then a doing business as or brand name. So that's the process that we need to follow to make this change legally on our end. It doesn't change anything with regard to our status in government or our funding or ability to achieve funding, anything of that nature. The resolution essentially that you have in front of you today allows Port Authority to make this change to Pittsburgh Regional Transit. It authorizes the agency to begin operating and doing business as Pittsburgh Regional Transit effective July 1st, 2022. Under, as I just mentioned, under the Second Class Port Authority Act, this organization's name is and will remain Port Authority of Allegheny County. The resolution allows us to brand our business and our operation under a fictitious trade name, Pittsburgh Regional Transit or PRT, without changing that legal name. And the resolution provides for the CEO and the senior management team to take all necessary actions to update the system, items such as vehicles, signage at stations and stops, uniforms for employees, our website, and more, and any actions necessary to protect our intellectual property interest and investment, items such as our PRT designs, our images, our logos, the name, and other similar items. And unless there's any questions, I would ask that the committee consider this item for approval.
Jim, for the committees, do you want to ask questions first, or you want to approve the vote on the resolution first and then ask questions? All right. Well,
John, I believe you call, pardon me, John, this is Catherine, and Sandy's on the phone. He can weigh in. I believe you call the question that you call for the motion first,
okay.
and then we have the discussion, but I will defer to Sandy.
Right.
Go ahead, Sandy.
Yeah, Catherine's got it. You call for a motion, get a second, then you ask for any discussion, John, and then you take the vote.
Okay, so.
And excuse me, Mr. Chair, prior to taking the motion, I did want to make two more comments relative to the presentation. there was an article over the weekend in the Post-Gazette noting feedback and some information also on our rebrand to Pittsburgh Regional Transit, specifically focusing on fare technologies and service. And I did want to point out that SPC has been handling a fare program through the transit operator committees and other committees for over a year. So this is an ongoing regional program that, to my understanding, our understanding, all of our regional partners are participating in. So this is not a new conversation. Second, and I would note more importantly, when it comes to service, today, if you live in Ross and you want to go to Cranberry for work or vice versa, you must go all the way into downtown Pittsburgh, transfer, pay 2 fares, and complete your trip. Same thing if you are in Moon and want to go to the cracker plant, if you are in Monroeville and want to go to Westmoreland. So when we are discussing service for our region, it is undeniable that we all have opportunities to work better together. And our goal is always to make the experience easier for folks to get where they're going. And that will conclude my interruptions, Mr. Chair. Thank you for bearing with me.
Thank you. Okay, so based on what Sandy said, do I have a motion to approve the resolution, which is the authorization for the Port Authority of Allegheny County to conduct business and operate as the Pittsburgh Regional Transit?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Are there questions of Jim? Jim, one of the things that I've noted, and we went through this when they changed the name of the Department of Public Welfare at the state to the Department of Human Services. It takes time to make all these changes, right? It's not an instantaneous thing like Connect cards and stuff. It's going to take a while to change these, right?
John, it is going to take some time. And, we probably would have done this in a similar way with announcing the name first and rolling out the changes second, even if we were able to go back a couple years and move forward as we had originally planned. But I think just there's been some disruption to that due to the pandemic. So it is going to take some added time to make all those changes throughout the system. But we do want to take advantage of some of our normal cycles of ordering vehicles and, bringing new uniforms into the system. So those things happen naturally anyway on an annual basis in most cases. So we want to take advantage of that and roll the change through that as much as possible. It's more efficient and probably a better financial decision for us in the long run.
Thank you, Jim. Are there any committee members have any questions?
When might we see the first, bunch of buses come in with a paint scheme?
I'd like to say, give me a month and I'll tell you. We're basically trying to, as I mentioned just a bit earlier, we're trying to figure out how to make an initial batch of changes, if you will, things that we wouldn't normally do through a bus purchase, for example. And basically just remove some of the decals that exist today on the vehicles and replace them with the PRT decals. So we are trying to nail down that timeline now, but I think over the next 2 to 3 months, we are going to see some of that occur. I think the easiest thing to see change will be the website. That'll probably be over the next few weeks.
Jim, I did have a question about the BRT. How does this tie into the BRT? Is that going to look the same or different?
The branding does tie into the BRT project, John, and in some ways we were waiting for, or at least holding off until the organizational rebrand to address the name of the BRT system. We do have some information on that coming up, just not this month, and I'll be able to, along with Dave Hoffaker, point to that more specifically, probably in the next 2 to 3 months as that moves forward.
Thank you, Jim. Additional board members have any questions of Jim? Are there any questions of stakeholders on the call? Okay, seeing no questions, there's been a motion on there which has been seconded. So all in favor of passing this on to the full board, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is Jen Liptak. I just wanted to note that I've been on the line. I just didn't want to interrupt the discussion, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think Austin Davis also joined us, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I'm here. I'm on the line.
Okay, so welcome, Austin and Jennifer. Now, so the last thing is, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
The meeting stands in adjournment until our July meeting. Thank you very much for joining us. And I guess then we have our next meeting, the Finance Committee, right, Ann?
Yep, we'll get started in just a few minutes, or in a minute. Okay, I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee meeting for June 16th, 2022. Our first item of business is a roll call. I'll start with members of the committee. Jen Liptak?
Here.
Representative Davis?
Here.
Carol DeLon?
Good morning.
Thank you. And if there are any other board members present, please identify yourselves.
John Tagg.
Stephanie Turman.
Lori Mizgorski,
Jessica
Michelle
Walker.
Smianik.
Okay, thank you. Our second item of business is approval of minutes from the May 19th Finance Committee meeting. Does anybody have any comments or corrections on the minutes? Okay, hearing none, could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. All right, our first resolution, or our only resolution today, is authorization to adopt the fiscal year 2023 operating and capital budgets and executive local match certifications. Pete.
Good morning, Madam Chair and other board members. So what we're presenting today are the 2023 operating and capital budgets. In terms of the operating budget, from the information that was presented in May, there was immaterial changes from the information that was presented in May. We made adjustments of about $687,000 to the operating budget, taking it from $519.662 million to $518.974 million. And just to highlight some of those changes, there was a slight reduction in wages and salaries. We were able to use a lower hourly wage rate due to some retirements. There was also a $66,200 change in employee benefits due to a reduction in retiree health care and also a FICA adjustment. We had a $578,000 change to materials and supplies. We were able to lock in another portion of our diesel fuel between the May meeting and today, so that was able to reduce the budget. Purchase services, however, went up by $198,000 due to some additional budget for work done by outside contractors and temporary help. And also our other expenses increased by $17,000. So from a federal stimulus perspective, which is being used to balance the 2023 budget, we went from $96.37 million in the May information that we presented to you down to $95.68 million. Of that $95.68 million, about 32.8 of that is would be due to reductions in revenue reduction from from pre-pandemic levels, and the other $62.9 million would be, I guess you could term a structural deficit. And I won't get in and belabor the details on this particular exhibit, other than just to note, from a total revenue perspective, as we mentioned in the May meetings, we would be projecting about a 15% increase in ridership. That would still result in about a $32.7 million reduction from pre-pandemic levels in total income. And from a gross expense perspective, now this is fiscal 22 budget versus the 23 budget, we'd have a 5.1% increase in gross expenses. And as you can see down below in the total operating grant section, that's where the at the May meeting, we had the $96.372 million deficit. Now, in order to eliminate that in the final 23 operating budget, that plug is being included in the amounts capitalized, which is about in the mid portion of the exhibit there, the $139.476 million. Any questions on the operating budget? From a capital,
Chair-
I'm sorry.
Actually, I have a question. Can you just go over, since it's kind of a relevant topic right now, you mentioned you're able to secure more favorable rates for diesel fuel. Can you go over that a little bit?
Yes. So what we do, what we have done traditionally along with Tony Trona in the procurement department, we've probably been doing this for I'd say 10 or 15 years at least, is that we buy futures contracts for diesel fuel. So if you were to buy just the spot or use the spot market price of diesel fuel over the past couple months, it could range anywhere from $4 to $5 a gallon. So what you try to do is you try to buy future contracts. So what we would have done is we would have gone out and purchased diesel fuel for anywhere between July and December of 2022. And likewise, we've also purchased future contracts for diesel fuel from January to June of 2023. So for instance, as of yesterday, we were using diesel fuel that we purchased at, I believe, $1.90.95, whereas the spot price for diesel fuel yesterday, and don't quote me the exact amount, but it was probably like in the $4.50 range. So we've saved significant dollars in diesel fuel. Now there's going to be a dramatic increase in diesel fuel for next year, even using those instruments. But if we were to have to buy the daily price of diesel fuel, it would increase even exponentially more than what we've got budgeted for next year.
And I imagine also it would be more difficult to budget that fluctuation, considering how bad the fluctuation is now. Okay, I appreciate that explanation. I just think it's
the contracting gives us some budget certainty. We still do have a small portion that goes to the float price just because of the month-to-month variation and the demand of diesel fuel that we need. You know, a February with fewer business days, we would use fewer gallons, so we wouldn't need as many, need to lock in as many gallons. But so there is still, you know, some fluctuation because we will have to use some of the float, but certainly not as risky if we just had to rely on the day-to-day fluctuations in diesel fuel. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
All right.
Any other questions on the operating budget? Okay,
So now moving on to the capital budget, there were more material changes than we saw on the operating side. The capital budget increased from the May presentation from $215.2 million to $232.865 million. And generally speaking, we were able to repurpose about $13 million in state operating assistance related to a couple of projects from a cash flow basis where we're not going to need the cash necessarily in fiscal 2023. We're able to repurpose that towards some other projects where we will incur the spend down in fiscal 2023. Also, we did get some more solid information on our federal dollars, and those increased by $2.1 million higher than our May preliminary capital budget. So what are those additional dollars being used for? We've been able to include a design phase or about preventive maintenance on about 23 bridges. We are able to include money for restraining rail replacement. Also, the additional funds can be used for the automatic trip stop on the library line, a South Hills Junction CO system, some improvements at the South Hills Village Rail Center, and also begin development of spec for a light rail vehicle replacement. So this resolution would adopt both balanced operating and capital budgets as required by law. And it also includes, excuse me, a local match certification to ensure the required county match will be provided for both the operating and capital budgets. And that is a Pennsylvania PennDOT requirement that be passed by the board.
Okay.
Are there any questions on the capital budget?
Okay, I don't hear any.
So this is Exhibit B for the capital budget. And this just shows what our 2021 capital budget was, what was presented in May for the capital budget, and this final presentation and amounts for today. You can see the increase from the 215.25 million in May to the 232.865 for this final rendition.
Any further questions on the Exhibit B? Okay. All right, I'll first do a motion and then we'll have questions. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any questions? Comments before we approve the resolution?
My comment would be, if I may, very good job. I understand this is very difficult with all these different moving parts. And I think the team is doing a very nice job trying to keep this as balanced as possible, understanding there will be fluctuations because of the inconsistency with the economy and just general operations right now. But great job to Catherine and the team, the finance team, and everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for those comments, but I certainly can't take credit. Ed Typansky, who does the capital, Tia Gunn and Sean Tregeser help put together the operating budget. And it's really a group effort that starts in January, meeting with all the department leadership. So, so thank you for those comments.
Yeah, I would second that. I definitely appreciate it. I know we start to see the information in April, but I know you guys are always working behind the scenes. Probably, you say January, it's probably a year long. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. And lastly, review of the May 2022 financial statements.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So from an operating income perspective for the month, we were $3.4 million below budget due to lower passenger revenues and also access shared ride reimbursement. Our total income, however, was $1.4 million higher than April. The April total income was artificially low because we did have the impact of the 2-week free ride period that occurred in March. So April had a lot of credits associated with that, but May was higher than April. Our total operating income for the year is $42.4 million below budget. And once again, due to lower fixed route and access ridership, we are using ARPA funding to fund this shortfall in passenger revenues. In terms of expenses, for the month, we were 2.8 million below budget, primarily due to lower purchase services, employee benefits, materials and supplies. And those were the 3 categories contributing most to that variance for the month. Expenses do continue to trend well below budget. We're at 41.3 million below budget. And this variance will result in the authority using fewer federal stimulus dollars than were originally included in the fiscal 22 operating budget. Our total subsidy for the month was $7.2 million below budget and $22.8 million below budget for the fiscal year. And those were both related to having to use fewer federal stimulus dollars in order to support the operating budget for fiscal 22. Should be mentioned that in early June, we did submit another invoice to FTA for about $10.2 million that eliminates the operating budget deficit through May of $6.5 million. So for the year, we're up to about $44 million in federal stimulus dollar usage. From a year-over-year perspective, our total operating income is $14.8 million higher than last fiscal year, and that's due to higher passenger revenues than fiscal 21, also higher access revenue and advertising revenue. Our total operating income is 40.6% higher than last fiscal year. From an expense perspective, we're about $8.2 million higher than last fiscal year, and that's due to higher wages and salaries, materials and supplies, other expense, and also access expense. Our total subsidy is $7.5 million below last fiscal year. So our higher passenger revenues that we're incurring in fiscal 22 has resulted in us having to use less federal stimulus dollars than in the prior year. In terms of operating reserves, we began the month with $168.3 million in operating reserves. We had $34.7 million in cash inflows for the month of May from passenger revenues, advertising revenues, operating assistance, and also other grant proceeds. In May, we had cash outflows of $40.3 million towards salaries and wages, benefits, materials and supplies, and purchase services. So for the month of May, we ended at $162.7 million in operating reserves at the end of the month. Can I answer any questions on the May financial results?
Any questions from the committee or other board members?
The other question I have is the projected use or actual use, I should say, of the ARPA money, was that, it's consistent with our projections moving forward? I know we have limited supply and it's filling in a great need of revenue loss, and it's not limited loss from, we're not trying, it's just, usage for our passengers is still down. So are we still good when we project out that use of dollars in future years?
Yes. Currently we're projecting the federal stimulus dollars to last through fiscal 2027. And I would think that given our spending levels for the past, anywhere from 4 to 5 years, that if those levels continue, that those federal stimulus dollars would last even longer than through than through fiscal 27.
Great, thank you. I just think that's helpful because there's this perspective that I think we need to always be reminded of. Every year to operate, we continue to service at our levels. When we fill it in with other dollars, that revenue loss compounds. So I know you guys are trying really hard to be very smart about how we allocate funds and continue to provide the best service that we can at the level that we want. I think you guys are doing a really, really great job under very difficult circumstances.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, that was the end of our business. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to
So
adjourn.
moved. Second.
Okay, thank you. We stand adjourned until our July meeting. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Smianik, and we are getting ready for the Performance Oversight Committee. So just take a second, adjust your papers, and we will get started. Good morning, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order. Our first item this morning on the agenda is roll call. So as I call our committee members, Representative Austin Davis, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Representative Lori Migorski.
Present.
Any other members of the board, please state your name for the record.
Jeff Lightwin.
John Ted.
Jessica Walzabell.
Ann O'Gorick.
Jen Liptak.
Great, thank you, everyone. Our second item of business is approval of the minutes of the May 19th, 22 Performance Oversight Committee. Do we have any changes or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes as they stand?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Very good. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 3 is our proposed resolutions. Good morning, Mr. Trona. Thank you for being up there and ready to go with awarding of
morning.
bids.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, board members, committee members. I have 3 items for your review and presentation to the full board for approval. All of the bids were publicly advertised and our e-business documents were distributed. The first being bus batteries. 4 firms accepted our invitation. 2 bids were received for bus batteries, AGM type, over the 2-year period for our bus fleet. The recommendation is that the contract be awarded to the low responsive bidder, which was Northeast Battery and Alternator LLC.
Listen to the conference and will attempt to disconnect them. If you wish to remain in the conference, please press star 1. 15.
Award the bid to Northeast Battery and Alternator LLC, an estimated amount of $241,500 over a 2-year period. The pricing represents a 19% increase from the previous contracted price for these supplies over a year ago. Number 2, LRV brake disc pads. 1 firm accepted the invitation. 1 bid was received for these LRV disc brake pads for the authority's fleet. The recommendation that the low bidder be awarded to the low bidder, Nor Brake Company, in the amount of $195,300. There's been no recent purchase of these items under contract. However, the staff has determined the prices to be fair and reasonable. With 1 bid, we do our single bid survey. And reflected that Kenora is the manufacturer of this brake pad. So all others would have to purchase the pads from Kenora and thus could not be competitive in the bid process. Number 3, pest control services. 3 firms accepted, 3 bids were received for this services for the authority's various vehicles and facilities over a 3-year period. Recommendation that the contract be awarded to the low bidder, which was Orkin Pest Control, estimated amount of $212,964. These prices represent a 70% increase from the previous contracted price for these items over 3 years ago. The contract from 3 years ago to this current contract is we're really comparing apples to oranges. We added over 200 additional line items to this contract, such as signal huts, equipment buildings, substations along the rail. So it's a significantly different contract than the one I'm comparing it to, the one we had in the past. That's the bulk of the 70% increase. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Trona. Are there any questions of our board members? First of all, with our committee for Mr. Trona, and then board members? Hearing no questions, could I have a motion to move this resolution forward to the full board meeting?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
I'll accept that as a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, motion carries to the full board. Thank you, Mr. Trona.
Thank you.
Item B on our agenda, authorization to award construction contract to the Wood Street and Steel Plaza System Improvements Project. Mr. Edbilski, good morning.
Good morning. This resolution seeks authorization to award the construction contract for the Wood Street and Steel Plaza System Improvements. This project replaces the existing electrical distribution switchboards and the tunnel fan dampers in the Wood Street and Steel Plaza light rail stations. Shown at the bottom of the page is a switchboard lineup, and this gear is critical to maintain our tunnel fans and other ancillary equipment in the tunnel, and it's critical to the operation of the system. In addition to that, we're going to include replacement of 2 transformers, one at Library Station and one at Castle Shannon Light Rail Substation. These transformers take the utility power feed that come in, and they convert the power from the utility to the power needed to generate and operate the light rail system. In addition to the transformers that we install, we also receive spare transformers, one at each, that we will keep and maintain and have at our disposal to use in the event that we have failure at other transformer locations in the system. These are very typical transformers from site to site or substation to substation, so we're able to interchange them and use them throughout the system. They're long lead. They take like 9 months to fabricate and receive. So it's important that we have this equipment on hand, on ready to be able to use should we have a failure at one of the other locations. That's why we have spare transformers being delivered as well. The existing equipment's over 25 years old, and the parts to repair them are becoming difficult to find. And if we don't procure this equipment, failure to do so or without the ability to repair or maintain this equipment would affect our performance of the light rail system, which could ultimately lead to shutting down the system. So obviously very critical to our operations. The low bidder is Wellington Power Corporation among 4 bids received, and the contract award amount would be $6,996,000. And also, I didn't list this on the slide, but this is a state-funded contract, so it operates under the state's diverse business participation program. And Wellington is proposing 4.14% participation on this project for diverse business. Keep in mind, a lot of the equipment is has significant cost to it, like transformers and so forth. So the participation is not available on purchasing equipment, but they have gone through that good faith process that our diverse business office and Sue brought us outlined for you. And they have done that, and we'll be pursuing that through this project. The duration for this contract is 15 months from notice to proceed. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I respectfully request the committee move us to the full board for consideration and award.
Thank you, Mr. Bilski. Any questions from our committee members for Mr. Bilski? Any questions or comments from other board members for Mr. Bilski? Hearing no other questions for Mr. Bilski and his proposed resolution, could I have a motion to move this forward to the full board?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other questions? Otherwise, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Bilski.
Thank you.
That concludes the performance oversight agenda for this morning. And I will make a motion that we adjourn, and our next committee meeting is up with the technology committee. So we are adjourned.
Okay, let's get the technology stuff up. I think we just have one item today beyond our approval. All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Technology Committee. I'm going to do a roll call of committee members first. Representative Ms. Gorski.
Present.
Thank you and good morning. And may other board members identify themselves for the record.
Jeff Letwin.
John Tagg.
Ann O'Gorick.
Michelle Smianik.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to do the first item of business, which would be the approval of the minutes for the May 19th, 2022 Technology Committee. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
And I will second. All those in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we have awarding of the bids. Mr. Trona will be up. Mr. Trona, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members, committee members. I have 4 items for your review and recommendation to the full board for approval. All of our bids were publicly advertised and our e-business documents were distributed for each. The first is Cisco SmartNet support. 4 firms accepted the invitation. 4 bids were received for the purchase of the SmartNet support over a 3-year period. It's our recommendation that the contract be awarded to the low bidder, which was Gov Connections, Inc., estimated amount of $198,488.57. This price represents a 14% increase from the previous contracted price for these services 3 years ago. Number 2 is Avaya Support Advantage. 5 firms accepted the invitation. 2 bids were received for the purchase of this support over a 3-year period. Recommendation that the contract be awarded to the low bidder, which was AEC Group, estimated amount of $208,878.68. This price represents a 13% decrease from the previous contracted price for these services over 3 years ago. Now you may ask why a decrease when we see nothing but increases. As we looked into this, the contract has been changed from 3 years ago. We actually we decreased the service level on this particular contract for the phone systems. So less service equaled less price. Number 3, VMware support renewal. 9 firms accepted the invitation. 5 bids were received for the purchase of this support over a 3-year period. excuse me, the recommendation that the contract be awarded to the low bidder, which was SciTech, estimated amount of $361,144.33. This price represents a 15% increase from the previous contracted price for these items 3 years ago. Number 4, Barracuda spam filter and message archive renewal. 10 firms accepted the invitation. 7 bids were received for the purchase of this service over a 3-year period. The low bid received from CDW Government LLC was rejected for non-responsiveness. V Prime submitted the next low bid, but acknowledged that their price was incomplete and formally withdrew. Our recommendation that the contract be awarded to the third low responsive bidder, estimated amount to V Cloud Tech, estimated amount of $150,822.92. This price represents a 19% increase from the previous contracted price for these services 2 years ago. Now, the low bidder, it was non-responsive. Their bid was $8,000. They did not complete the entire bid process. V Prime, their bid was $8,900. Again, they did not complete every price within the categories, and they changed our T's and C's. But the other bidders, the range went from our third low bidder, which we're recommending at $150,000. The other bids range in that area from $157,000 to as high as $357,000. So you can see where the market prices actually was with the bids that were complete and competitive. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Tony, and you've answered all the questions I had in advance. It's almost like you read my mind. So basically, this third low bidder actually was the low bidder, if you're looking at it from perspective that the other two weren't complete. So I do appreciate the presentation. I'll ask committee members if there's any questions. Oh, actually, let me do the motion first. I apologize. May I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
And I'll second. Thank you. So are there any questions? Lori, do you have any questions for Mr. Trona?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any board member have questions? Okay, seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation. I know the technology committee is always the most fun. Today, the items were a little bit more boring than normal, but we appreciate the presentation, Mr. Trona. That
Thank you.
concludes the committee meetings for today. On behalf of all the chairs and the Port Authority board members and staff, I'd like to thank those for participating, and I wish everyone have a safe, happy, and cool afternoon, even though I think it's going to be 9 million degrees. So thank you, and that concludes our meetings for today. Adjourned. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.